Hello F1 fans! Welcome back to the F1 Masters podcast. As usual, you're with me, Harry, David here. And today we're going to discuss for the first time, not things about 2026, but things about 2027. We are going to predict the lineups of every team that is going to hopefully participate in next season. Actually, the season after the next, because actually the 2026 season haven't even kicked out. So
yeah, we did a similar thing last year for 2026, and I mean we got most of them correct because we said that like most of the drivers will remain in the teams, but now I mean it's new regulations. And drivers may adapt differently.
And we don't know what is going to happen actually. Are we going to have like something like Mercedes in 2014, or things are going to, I don't know, took a really surprising turn? We don't know, and that is why the drivers market is so fragile, would be, I think, so fragile between 26 and 27 compared to the drivers market between 24 and 25 and 25 and 26.
Yeah.
And also, 17 out of the 22 drivers' contracts expire at the end of the season, so big year for most of them, especially with unsecured seats. But yeah, I guess we can just dive right into it, and we'll start off with our brand new team actually that haven't even had a race yet. Cadillac, who obviously have Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez for the 2026 season. And I guess I can start off since I began speaking. I think they'll be fairly balanced in terms of performance. I don't think we can expect either one to dominate the other. I think they're pretty similar level. However, I do think that there's a factor here, and there is the American factor. And I think that Sergio Perez is more likely to be retained, as I do believe he brings more sponsorship money and has a bigger overall fan base than Valtteri Bottas, and he's obviously from Mexico, which is a definitely a market that Cadillac is interested in. And I think that unless Valtteri Bottas absolutely destroys him, which I don't see, I think Sergio Perez gets to stay and Valtteri Bottas will be dropped for Colton Herta, not because not because Valtteri Bottas is a particularly bad driver, but because I think Colton Herta, they're really trying to make this work, and the fact that they've gone all the way to get him into Formula 2 so he can get his super license, I think this shows really strong signs of their attempt to get Colton Herta. And even if I don't even think Colton Herta is like that good of a driver, but I still think that Cadillac, that is their guy, and they really want, especially an American driver, a guy of their own to be in their team, so that's why I have him.
Well, I'm going to disagree with that. I think that your thought process is absolutely correct, but the factor that I think is going to be like really changing the things would be that I think that Herta would fail in F2, and he would be really disappointing, and I don't think that he will be F1 ready anytime actually in his career. So that is why I don't believe that he's ever going to set a foot in F1, and that is why I imagine that they would enter the 2026 season with that idea that probably Perez would be their lead driver for 2027, and Herta could join the team, be an American in an American team, and after that I don't know, probably take over and have a relatively good F1 career. I don't think that is going to happen, and I think mid-season they would understand that and they would shift the project to something else, and that is why I think they would remain with that lineup for the 2027 season with Bottas, with Perez. I think they would both show they're drivers with experience, they have driven for great teams, and that is why I think they would show their best, and they don't have that pressure on them. And I think their dynamic can actually be pretty similar to the one of David Coulthard and Mark Webber during the first years of Red Bull. And that is why my prediction for 2027 is for their lineup to remain unchanged.
I actually like what both of you said. Is David's logic absolutely makes sense, and what Vasco said also is I actually agree with Vasco, and I think that they will retain their current drivers because, as he said, experience is key. Also, Colton Herta, I think that it will be difficult for him to adapt from the IndyCar cars to the Formula 2. Even though he is already experienced, he's 25, he has had a few years of IndyCar, but maybe he'll just need more time. Maybe he, like in 27, he'll have a better season and they will grab him for 28, but I don't know if that's going to happen. It's just that in the near future, I don't see him getting to F1 like for next year at least. So that's my logic.
Yeah, I think it's fair to consider both of them to stay the same. I just think that Colton Herta, you mentioned the concern of him not performing in F2. I don't think this is that big of a factor because when we look at someone like Kimi Antonelli, he finished 6th in F2. Franco Colapinto finished 9th. Ollie Behrman finished 12th in F2, and all of them got into Formula 1. So I don't think this is really that big of a factor for him, as I don't even think he will challenge for the title in Formula 2. But I still think that Cadillac, they really want him, and I think Perez and Bottas, they're really kind of short-term solutions. These are old guys after all. They don't have a lot to go in their career anyways. So I think that they will look to at least get one driver for a more long-term kind of deal.
I think both options are pretty viable, and actually if Herta manages to finish like even 7, 8 or something like that, they would most probably go for him, but I think he's not the right age profile. He hasn't shown that he has that crazy talent in him, and that is why I think that they would decide to stick for at least another year with that lineup. And actually, F2 is crazy sometimes because, as you mentioned, with Colapinto, with some other drivers that have finished 8, 9, 10th, and they managed to secure a place in Formula 1. But at the same time, we've had champions that haven't like let's say if it wasn't for a crazy turn of events, let's say Nick De Vries was probably never going to drive in F1. Drogovic. Yet to this day,
Theo Pourchaire.
Yeah, Theo Pourchaire. Callum Ilott, if we go back in time, he was second, but he still has shown a lot of promise. And
even the current champion, Leonardo Fornaroli, didn't get onto the grid. So.
Yeah, and that is a bit crazy, but that is F1. The problem is, even with 22 places on the grid, there would be so many talented drivers that would be left out and would be forced to drive Formula E or some other gross competition.
Yeah, I think Cadillac, obviously, no one knows how well they're going to perform, so this is going to be a big, I think, important factor for them when it comes to determining their drivers for the future as well. So we'll have to wait and see for that. Although we all agree, though, that Sergio Perez will definitely stay. Next up, we have Alpine. So, Harry, why don't we start with you? What do you have for Alpine?
So, firstly, I believe that Pierre Gasly will be retained for 27, as he has already established a connection with this team. He has been there for a few years. Also, I think he will have a good enough season to show them that he deserves a place. Regarding Franco Colapinto, I think that they're going to start losing trust in him this season if he continues to not perform well, not match Gasly, also crash the car sometimes, which we have seen. Especially back last year in Williams, not last year, but 24.
Not only once or twice, actually.
Yeah, so that's my concern. I think that they'll actually make a switch and it won't be Franco Colapinto. This is going to be a really random shout. And I'm going to say Ritomo Miata. Okay, hear me out. So he actually made a test with Alpine, I think 2 tests last year in the summer. And even though he is related to Toyota and to Haas in this way, because Toyota is the main sponsor of Haas right now, I think that there won't be a place for him in Haas, and that's why they're going to push him into other teams in F1. And in Alpine, as I said, there may be an open seat, so he may actually, with this connection that he has from last year, he may actually get the seat, even though a factor in this is how well he's going to perform in F2, even though, as David said already, sometimes this isn't that big of a factor. So even if he's 8th, 9th or whatever, maybe he'll still manage to get the seats in
F1. I can go, yeah. So I agree, Pierre Gasly. I think Pierre Gasly will definitely stay. he is their saving grace, really. So they cannot afford to let him go. And I don't really see a spot for Pierre Gasly to go anywhere else, really, at this moment in time. Although he is getting kind of old now, so we'll see if he has motives to try something out. My second driver, I deliberated for this about a long time, and I was looking at the Alpine Academy, and I'm like, who is their best driver? And I look and I see like Gabriele Mini, who he's okay, but I don't think he's like F1 material. He's not that good of a driver, in my opinion. So I have them actually picking up Leonardo Fornaroli, who is currently reserve driver for McLaren. I think that, yeah, this is kind of maybe a stretch, as the McLaren Alpine connection is very damaged currently, but I think Fornaroli is just too good not to have an F1 seat, and Alpine, I think at that point, will be desperate for a good driver, and I think Fornaroli has proven himself in F3, F2, that he's a great driver, and Fornaroli, spoiler alert, there will not be a free seat at McLaren the following year, so his best hope is trying to get a permanent deal, a different team, and I think Alpine is his best shot at that, and if Alpine really want to start progressing up the field, they should get Leonardo Fornaroli.
Interesting shout. For first, I want to start with Gasly, which is actually pretty interesting because I also think that he would remain in Alpine, but if there is an opening, even if because from the top four teams, if it's not Ferrari, and I don't think Ferrari would pick him up even if Lewis Hamilton decides to retire, I think that if there is place in Williams or if Cadillac are alright, I think there can be an opening for Gasly.
Maybe
but,
Aston Martin if Fernando retires.
Well, not sure that Aston Martin is a great environment, and I think that they would be aiming higher. But I think that Gasly would remain there and he would become the team leader. And I think that another driver from the McLaren Academy is actually going to join them, and that is Alex Dunn. I think that he's going to have a great season in F2, and I think that he would show a lot of promise, and with not that many great options on the table, I think they would take a gamble on Alex Dunn.
I just wanted to mention that Alex Dunn was actually dropped mid-season by McLaren, and he is no longer their driver.
And he is kind of,
He's independent currently.
Yeah, and also
which is actually even better.
He has had a lot of accidents in F2. That's why he has become, known as a crash-prone driver.
He did fall off in the championship. He was leading it at one point and finished fifth.
Yeah.
But I think
still,
with another year of experience and. To be honest, I don't think that Alex Dunn, if I had to predict the table, I don't think that Alex Dunn is going to win it, but I am like 90% sure that he's going to be in top 3 at the end of the season, and that is why I think he would show enough promise for relatively desperate Alpine, let's call it that way, for relatively desperate Alpine team to pick up a great driver who has a really high ceiling, and that is why I think that Alpine would take the gamble and go with Alex Dunn.
Interesting, yeah. All of us had interesting picks here.
3 different.
Alpine are pretty random.
Yeah, but I think we can move on to Audi now, and I'm going to start by saying that I think that Gabriel Bortoleto will remain in Audi for 27 because he is this is going to be an important season for him because he needs to prove what he showed in Formula 2 is actually can also be transferred to Formula 1 because last year he had some pretty miserable moments, especially the Brazilian Grand Prix weekend was horrible. But I think that he can show that he is capable of at least matching Nico Hülkenberg and outperforming him probably. Regarding Hülkenberg, I think that this potentially may be his last year in Formula 1, even though he may continue to 27, but I'll just say that I'll assume that this is his last season, and I'll say that they'll pick Leonardo Fornaroli, and he will not go to Alpine, which is, it may sound illogical, but I mean, Fornaroli is going to push for a seat in a different team. As David said, there won't be an opening in McLaren anytime soon, probably. So, and Audi probably want like another, younger driver with potential who can carry their team forward into the new regulations. So, it may not make sense, but I feel like this, is a really good solution for them for the future.
I think Gabriel Bortoleto has the potential, obviously, and he is, he was fantastic in F2. And I think last year, yes, he was overall not great, maybe, but I think he did show flashes of really good performances, and he did pick up some good points finishes. So I think that there's potential there. He's still growing, obviously, as a driver. And yeah, I would hope that he's at least matching Hulk in terms of points. I think this is really the bare minimum goal he needs to set. But I think he stays. I don't really see a reason for him to leave, even if he's average. Like, who else are they going to get that's better than him? I don't really see that. He's also very young still, so I think he stays. Nico Hülkenberg, I also think he stays, actually, because he's a really good driver, and he doesn't really shown any signs of wanting to leave F1, and he's performing at such a high level. This year was one of the best seasons of his career, so he is really riding all of that momentum, and I don't really see that stopping anytime soon. Also, German driver for Audi, that's also I think a factor here. So I think both of them stay. Audi had no reason to replace them.
I absolutely support this take, and I think that everything that I was going to say as an argument, David said it. So yeah, the German connection, the fact that you have one much more experienced driver who is coming out of probably the best season of his career, and Bortoleto, who is young prodigy, who has once again really high ceiling. I think that they're going to stick with that lineup, and at least in the first 2-3 years of the team, which is going to be the super important on where actually Audi would be going, whether they would be some of the big forces or whether their project would fail. I think that this is a pretty safe lineup to have. So that is why I have also gone with Hulk and Bortoleto.
Okay, let's move on to Haas now, and let's start with Vasco this time.
For Haas, I think that they would stick with Esteban Ocon. Would be the first driver. Ocon, he has shown some great things, not mesmerizing, but at the same time, I think he's an alright driver. He has shown he has been in the sport for almost 7-8 years or something like that. So I think Ocon has a lot to show, and he can be that more experienced driver. And I think that the second driver would be a person with a lot of promise that I think is probably one of the biggest favorites to win Formula 2 this season from the Ferrari Academy. I think that this is going to be Rafa Kamara.
Okay, I agree with Rafa Kamara, because I also think that he's one of the contenders to win F2, as he had an incredible season in Formula 3 this year. Regarding Ocon, I actually think he'll be dropped, and Oliver Behrman will remain in Haas. This also depends on Ferrari, because we know that if there is an opening in the Ferrari team, Oliver Behrman is the first driver on their list for sure. But I think that Ferrari, okay, I'll say this later again, but I think they'll retain their lineup. That's why Behrman remains in Haas. He will prove that he is capable of going to Ferrari one day. And Ocon, I think that he began the season well, but after that he kind of fell off. And if he cannot match Behrman's pace once again, then maybe this will be his last year in Haas, at least, maybe in F1 as well.
Spoiler words, I think that Ferrari would drop one of their drivers, and that is why.
I assume
that
why Behrman is not in Haas, this is the reason. Okay. David, what do you think?
We'll talk about Ferrari when we get to Ferrari, but I have them keeping Ollie Behrman. I think that purely, I do agree that I think he is the first guy they will definitely get. He's the next guy up, for sure. But I don't see that happening in 2027. And as for Esteban Ocon, I think Esteban Ocon only keeps the seat if Ollie Behrman leaves Haas. If he doesn't leave Haas, which I think he won't, Esteban Ocon, it's over for him. Like, even if he's like a good driver, I still think he's like a good driver. He can get some good results, but I think, Rafael Camara is fantastic driver, and yeah, he's my pick to win F2 for sure. Really good driver, and I would love to see him in F1. And I mean, if Haas have a lineup of Ollie Behrman and Rafael Camara, I think this would be one of the most like exciting lineups, honestly, to watch these two young drivers, ambitious to make a lot of things happen. So yeah, I have Rafael Camara and Ollie Behrman, but I could definitely see Esteban Ocon staying if Ollie Behrman leaves, but for now, I don't think he will. Let's go to our next team, which is Aston Martin. So we have, obviously, the Adrian Newey era is now fully upon us. And I think that Lance Stroll will stay. Lance Stroll will stay. I mean, I'm sorry, but I will never predict him to leave because he has that seat for life. Like, it doesn't matter what he does, he'll stay there.
Even if he somehow manages to record minus points.
Yeah. I don't see Lance Stroll leaving. Lance Stroll is chilling. Doesn't matter what he does, it's Lance Stroll. His dad owns the team. We don't really need to go into it. Lance Stroll will stay until he can physically not be able to drive the car. But even when he's physically not able, like when he broke his hand, he still drove the car in Bahrain.
You know what? He's like, I think that you have seen these LinkedIn memes with like, oh, I'm 27 and I'm so successful. What is your excuse? And you see that actually, let's say, I run a super big hedge fund, and actually his father is the CEO. So yeah, this is the case. This is the Formula One.
Yeah, this is
nepotism in its
version.
form.
Yeah, this is the Lance Stroll experience. But yeah, Lance Stroll. I was gonna say something else about Lance Stroll. I forgot. Oh yeah, no, I was gonna say something about Aston Martin, but this is not really like a discussion for today. But I feel like they won't develop really as a team unless they drop Lance Stroll. But I think that Lawrence Stroll still holds too much power there for them to really do anything. Even Adrian Newey won't be able to convince him. So Lance Stroll stays. My other driver, Fernando Alonso, is going to retire in my opinion. Like, it's time. Like, I'm sorry. I think Aston Martin are not gonna be that good this year anyways, and I think like he's exhausted of driving bad cars. I know he's done it for like almost his entire career, especially in the last 10 years, but it's just time. He also had a child, I think.
He will have.
Oh, he will have a child, yeah. So I think he's moving on in his life at this point, and I think this will really be his final season. And sadly though, this really leaves a big hole for Aston Martin because they don't really have like a lot of good drivers they can get. They could get someone like Pierre Gasly, for example, I think could work, or I don't know if Nico Hülkenberg is dropped from Audi or Esteban Ocon. Doesn't matter. Like, there are options, but nothing great. But I've gone with Jack Crawford, runner-up in F2 last year. He is their reserve driver this year. I think really the safest choice, honestly, cheapest option, and he'll already be integrated in the team. I don't think he's that good of a driver, honestly, but I just think that that's really the most convenient option for them.
Well, I also think that Lance Stroll would remain with the team, like surprise, surprise. And I also think that Fernando Alonso is going to retire. It has been...
I mean, we say this every year, but...
Yeah, but this year it is. I think it is finally happening. But I think that it is. Actually, I don't think that Aston Martin would be bad. Actually, I think that they would push for that to be one of the teams in top 4. And actually, with Adrian Newey, I fully believe him. He has my full trust. We have seen him doing it for so many years.
With a Honda engine as well now.
Yeah. So that is why I have a huge upset. Like crazy prediction for that. But I think that if they show enough promise, I think that Oscar Piastri would join Aston Martin.
Wow. I didn't expect this.
Why? Okay, Why would Oscar leave McLaren?
Yeah, please elaborate.
Yes. First of all, after what we have seen last year, I think that you cannot have a competitive team. Like even if you have the best car, and you have two drivers who are not really capable of working together that in a great way, I think that this is a problem, and I don't think that McLaren would be. They may be the best team on the grid this year, but I don't think they would be as dominant with their car. And they have seen it in the past with Alonso and Hamilton, like Norris and Piastri are not Alonso and Hamilton, but like talent wise. But I don't think that this is going to work, and I think that Oscar is going to get fed up, and he's going to take a gamble and go to a team that has a high ceiling and can deliver, even if it is in a year or two or three. And that is why I think Aston Martin are one of the teams that have invested super heavily. They have Adrian Newey, and Honda have shown actually a lot of times that if they're given enough time, they can produce the best engine on the grid. And I think when Piastri hears that idea and sees all these promises, he would be like, okay, let's take a gamble, and he would be the team leader. Like the whole team would revolve around him, and they would probably create a car that is set up in a special way for him, like, I don't know, similar to what Verstappen and Red Bull are doing. And I think that given all these things, when he puts them like on a scale, compare like be the driver that is the second fiddle in McLaren, because it became obvious at the ending moments of last season that the team prefers Lando Norris. I think that Oscar have all the reasons to, like, when he sees an opportunity, to try and seize it.
That's an interesting argumentation. I'm really impressed by how you came up with this. And okay, I'm going to be the last one to say my take about Aston Martin. Okay, I think Fernando Alonso will not retire. I know that you guys believe this is going to happen this year, and I know we say it almost every year, but no, I think he will remain for one last season in 27, when he will be 46 years old. And I think that Lance Stroll will not be in the team. I'm not sure this is going to happen, but I believe that this should happen, and that's why I'm going to say that Jack Crawford will be picked over Lance Stroll, because, you know, they, like, for once they need to support their driver academy, you know.
I have another interesting take with, like, if it is not going to be Oscar Piastri, let's say if Piastri remains in McLaren, I think that Alonso would retire, like 99% sure. But I think that they would try to snap Lewis Hamilton if Ferrari drops him. Like something like that. I think that they would want.
They will love their washed champions.
Yeah. But they would definitely want to have that big name driver in there for 2027.
Yeah, I agree. But let's see. It depends on Alonso and Stroll. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. Watch them stay with freaking Alonso and Stroll for the 5th year in a row. I totally disagree about Oscar Piastri, but we can get on to Oscar Piastri when we get to McLaren.
Yeah, let's move on to Racing Bulls.
Yeah, Racing Bulls, and I don't know, I can start. So I think Arvid Lindblad almost certainly will stay. I think no matter what happens, unless he is like unbelievably awful, but I can't doubt that. I doubt that because there's no pressure really on Racing Bulls, whereas like Isaac Hadjar will have all the pressure at Red Bull, and I think the attention will be more on him rather than Arvid Lindblad. And Arvid Lindblad is driving against Liam Lawson. So I think Arvid Lindblad is absolutely fine to keep his seat no matter what, even though I don't think he's actually that good. But first year, he's extremely young, so they will definitely give him more than 1 year. My other driver, Liam Lawson, will be dropped. Like, I don't see a future for him. I don't think he's a bad driver necessarily, but I just don't really see any way for him to progress, really. They picked Hadjar over him in Red Bull, obviously, and I don't think he's ever getting back in that Red Bull after what happened last time. And I don't think any other team would really want him. Like, why would they want Liam Lawson? What does Liam Lawson bring? Pretty much nothing. So Liam Lawson will be one of the endless Toro Rosso Alpha Tauri RB drivers to just never see the day of light in F1 again and move on to Formula E or something like this.
Welcome to the Brendan Hartley Club.
Or Jean-Eric Vergne, for example. So I have, totally unbiased, I swear, but I really think Nikola Tsolov is getting this seat. And he is, because I actually thought about it, I looked at the F2, like, drivers, right? And I really think he's championship contender for sure. I think he has a high possibility of finishing top 3, but he's also the only Red Bull Academy driver in F2 right now, and they love promoting their Academy drivers, and I think, I don't really think they trust Liam Lawson anyways, so Nikola Tsolov, I think it will be time for him to become the first Bulgarian to ever make it to F1, and I think rightfully so, yeah, that's what I have.
Well, for me, I also think that Lindblad would be the guy that they would stick with, and I really tried. I tried to find like who the other driver can be, because I don't think that Liam Lawson would be in the team. I don't think that he can bring something really helpful to that team. So I was like, oh no, it is only hype and it is only bias because I'm Bulgarian and all that stuff. But I have also gone for Nikola Tsolov because he has the talent, and when he was in Formula 3, I was like, oh, like Formula 3 it is pretty different from Formula 2 and it is only hype for him and he's going to go to that forgotten land of F3, F2 drivers with talent. But actually he had an amazing season, and his 2 races in F2 were actually, when I watched them, they were actually pretty impressive, and I think that he's going to build on that and he's going to be one of the championship contenders. And considering that there would be a free seat in RB and he's the only RB driver in Formula 2, if he manages, let's say, if he manages to win the championship or be in top 3 and win some races, win some pole positions, and show that the quality in him is real, I think that he would be considered as the first option for that RB seat, even though he's from super small market country as Bulgaria.
I actually agree with what both of them said. And I think that the timing is perfect for Tsolov for 27. And yeah, I think that he will demonstrate what he's capable of in Formula 2. Totally not biased, honestly. All of us think that he actually is talented, and it's not only because we're Bulgarians. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, bias aside, like, when you really think about it, because I really thought about it, and I thought, who else is there? Like, there's actually, like, really no other realistic option. Like, they're not gonna bring like an experienced driver in this team.
Yeah, and we have seen, because from what I've seen circulating online, most of the people, like 90% of the people, think that Liam Lawson would remain with the team. But
that's probably the only case this doesn't.
Yeah, what does he bring you? He has shown you're not going to promote him in Red Bull again, and it is going to be just another, let's say, Pierre Gasly case, but Liam Lawson is less talented than Pierre Gasly, and I don't think that any of the teams would want to snap him. And at the same time, yeah, he brings experience to the team, but are they really, like, the people who are in charge of the team? Do they really care whether they would finish with 40 or 45 or 50 points at the end of the season? and just because of this like 5-6 more points to stick with a guy that you know that is definitely not going to improve or not going to go to Red Bull, or as I said a few times during this podcast, take a gamble. Take a gamble with a young driver, even if it doesn't turn out great. We have seen Red Bull and the way they treat young drivers. They're just going to put another young driver there, and like they're going to try until, like, I don't know, something clicks and they find the next Max Verstappen or the closest thing to Max Verstappen.
Yeah, I mean, let's see if this is going to change, because we know that Helmut Marko is not a part of the team anymore. So let's see if they treat their driver program differently from 26 onwards.
We'll see, definitely. But also, I think Isaac Hadjar is a total huge factor here, because what if he does what everyone before him has done? Well, Lindblad get promoted to Red Bull like halfway through the season, and then who goes in the RB after that, you know?
Or a crazy take like Soul goes directly to Red Bull.
This is the bias. No?
This is the bias. Yeah.
I think we should move on to Williams now.
This is our first team, by the way, where we all agreed on both drivers. I just like to see.
Congrats. Actually, we're having different opinions this time. So
Lovely.
For Williams, I'm pretty sure that they'll remain with what they have right now, which is Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon. They're like two great drivers, experienced. You know, they bring a lot to the team. Even though I'm concerned with how their car is going to turn out, we'll see, because there is like a potential that they will be last or somewhere near last, but we cannot predict this right now. I'm just saying that they will probably remain in the team.
Yeah, first days of tests are not looking great actually, because they're taking place right now. Williams are not taking part in them.
Things are really bad.
Yeah, I think that, but I think they're going to solve, or at least partially solve these issues, and for 2027 they would look better. And I think that they're going to stick with Albon and Sainz. And I think if there is going to be some kind of change, it is not going to be enforced by Williams. But I think that if there is an opening in one of the bigger teams, I think that Carlos Sainz is like one of the best drivers on the grid actually. And I think that, I don't know, if not Ferrari, definitely we already saw that works, and Ferrari were like, no, we don't do that here.
Not Red Bull probably as well.
I'm not sure about Red Bull actually, because I think if you're offered from super poor Williams, if you're offered, I don't think that is going to happen, but if you're offered the second seat at Red Bull, I don't think that Sainz is going to say no. I think like what is there to be lost for him? And I think that he's going to accept it. But I don't think that the second Red Bull seat would be available for him. And that is why I think Williams would stick with Albon and Sainz.
Okay, so I also think they'll stick with Albon and Sainz. No reason to change them. But Carlos Sainz, like, we've already seen, like, there were openings when he was leaving Ferrari. There was an opening at Red Bull and an opening at Mercedes, and neither team wanted him. So why would they want him now? I don't see any reason for that. So
yeah, especially when Ferrari have Oli Berman in the wings, and Mercedes
Ferrari would definitely. Yeah. I mean, Ferrari is like, this is like in the past. Like, he's never going back to Ferrari.
Yeah,
Red Bull is also in the past. He is never going back to them. Yeah. Why would he go back to the team?
He's not going back to McLaren as well. Like,
so my point is, he will not move to any of these teams, no matter what.
Well, this is.
He's not going to any of these teams.
I think Red Bull is the only like viable option, but he didn't actually try for Red Bull.
Because they did not believe in him, and they did not pick him over Verstappen. So why would he want to be in this team?
Well, when your competition is Max Verstappen, it's like it is understandable. And actually, it was his decision to leave for Renault.
And he made a fantastic career out of himself. Because he did this, not Red Bull. Red Bull did not help him in any ways really do anything.
Yes, but take this from different perspective. Like, are you going to stick with the team that finishes, let's say, 9th or 10th in the
He
standings.
doesn't have a choice. He doesn't have a choice.
Well, but if Red Bull, because options are not looking that great for Red Bull, and if they see that the Hadjar experiment, I hope that it will work. But if the Hadjar experiment doesn't really pan out, and it is not the best. The best idea for Red Bull, and they're looking for a second driver. I don't think that they're going to go with Lindblad.
Okay, so
let's say.
why didn't they take Sainz when Sainz was dropped by Ferrari? But they picked Liam Lawson.
Because I don't know, they believed in him.
So if Hadjar gets dropped, they will get Arvid Lindblad and they will keep
But don't
cycling
forget
their own drivers.
But don't forget something. Horner and Helmut Marko are no longer there, so the approach can be different. I think that if Sainz is going to any of the top 4 teams, I think that Red Bull are the only, I don't know, possible destination.
I disagree.
But yeah, I don't think that this is going to happen. So yeah. We're on a hot streak 2 in a row that we
but I
all
think the
agree.
streak will end as we move on to Ferrari.
Let's move on to Ferrari.
Well, we already know that.
I kind of spoiled my take. I think that both Charles and Lewis will remain for 27.
I feel like Lewis is going to have another miserable year, and he's going to be so unhappy, and he's going to see that things are not going, like the 8th title is never going to happen, and he would prefer to retire, and that is why I think that Leclerc would stick with the team, even though I expect pretty bad year for Ferrari, and there can be some changes there if Leclerc. I wait to see the moment when Leclerc finally gets fed up with that team and goes to another team, and he's like actually doing great and actually, I don't know, winning races. So yeah, that is why I think Ferrari, their lineup would be Leclerc and Oli Berman.
With Leclerc, no brainer. I think stays Ferrari no matter what. I think he will die in a Ferrari uniform at some point. But Lewis Hamilton, I have him staying. Why do I have him staying? Well, because it's still Lewis Hamilton, and I think that Lewis Hamilton is a driver that has had such a career that he will go out on his own terms. There's no such thing as Ferrari will drop Lewis Hamilton, because Ferrari just can't afford to do this, really, because Lewis Hamilton is still like the most famous Formula 1 driver in history, and we all know like the day he signed what happened to the Ferrari stocks, and I think that Lewis is an incredibly valuable asset for them, not to mention they pay him so much money. So I think that having to drop him forcefully would really not be at all the move. And these are new regulations, so who's to say that Lewis can't be good in these regulations? I think that he is still showed good races. He has done good races. Yeah, I think his qualifying form has definitely fallen off, but it's still Lewis Hamilton. This is like Michael Schumacher in 2012 when he retired from Mercedes, right? But let's say he wanted to do 1 more year, right, and wasn't retiring. Would Mercedes have been like, no, you're too bad, we're dropping you for Lewis Hamilton? No, they would have never done that, because it's Michael Schumacher, and this is the same thing for Lewis Hamilton. I don't see Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton has no reason to retire. He has like no life outside of F1. Like, this is just facts. He is extremely passionate about racing, and as like one of the greatest racing drivers of all time, he has so much leverage, I think, over Ferrari that they cannot force him to leave under any circumstance, and I believe that he's too valuable to Ferrari to drop this quickly, especially.
I don't think that Ferrari would force him. I think unintentionally Ferrari would force him, because I expect bad things from them, and like
sure, I expect bad things as well.
Yeah, and I think at one moment Lewis would get fed up, and he would be like, okay, this experiment was not successful. Let's shake our hands and continue our lives. And Lewis is not 30. He is not 35. He's
41.
Yeah, and I think that at one point in your career, when you see well, but Fernando Alonso is not Lewis Hamilton, and Lewis Hamilton is not Fernando Alonso. Like they're different in the way they approach things, and I think that Lewis, if he gets like really fed up, he would be like, okay, and what is the point of me staying here, probably ruining my legacy in a way? Like he cannot ruin his legacy, but like 2 or 3 really poor seasons in Ferrari can have a negative impact on his career, and he would be like, okay, what is the point in me like staying for another year in a poor team? It would be a bit like, I don't know, when Jordan played for the Wizards.
But what? What is this comparison?
Interesting.
But Lewis, what was the point of him joining Ferrari in the first place? Just to do 2 years and leave? No, like he wanted to build something there. He wants to obviously create a winning culture, even though like this hasn't happened yet. Obviously, I don't see him giving up on this like in the span of 2 years. Like this is a long process. We know Michael Schumacher took him 5 years to build up Ferrari to get them into a championship.
But that was Schumacher in his prime. As I said, that is the main reason. Lewis, he doesn't really have like 4 or 5 years of his career anymore. He joined Ferrari and he was like, okay, let's try this and hope that Ferrari would not be that bad. But I think that when after his first few months in Ferrari, he understood that the thing that he expected and the reality in Ferrari are pretty different.
But they're already making changes. Like they've changed his engineer, first of all, which was like I think like one of the biggest issues last year was that he was not at all on page with his engineer. I think that they are giving him like opportunity to have control over some things now, and I think the more he gets integrated in this team, I think the more he will feel the urge to find success in Ferrari, which is why Charles Leclerc stayed there for so many years, because he is at the moment addicted to this idea that bringing Ferrari to glory can be the greatest achievement ever. So I think Lewis Hamilton definitely has another year in him. But anyways, we've been talking about this for quite a while. Red Bull. Red Bull, obviously, they have Max Verstappen. So he is not getting dropped, in my opinion.
Unless he leaves the sport.
Yes.
I don't think this is gonna happen in 26.
Although he is going to drive the 24 hours of Nürburgring, so we're getting there definitely.
Yeah.
And Isaac Hadjar, I think he stays. I like Isaac Hadjar. He's a good driver, and I mean, like at this time we've only had 1 day of testing, but he was good in that first day.
Yeah. So the Isaac Hadjar hype train is real.
So Isaac Hadjar hype train is real. Yeah.
Yes, I'm getting on that hype train. Like
come aboard.
Yeah, like for the after I. Like in 2-3 weeks, I'll be out of the Michael Carrick hype train and I'll get on the Isaac Hadjar hype train. You know how this works.
It's a cycle of hype trains.
Yeah. But I think that Verstappen, there has been lots of rumors that this is going to be his last year in Red Bull or some kind of bullshit. I don't think that this is going to...
This was last year.
Yeah, so I think that Verstappen would remain in Red Bull. I think that Hadjar would have better year than Lawson and Tsunoda, definitely. He's not going to be... he's not going to be any close to Verstappen, but I think that his performance would be respectable. And I think that actually Red Bull, they're not going to have bad year, but I don't think that I'm actually not sure. I'm on the fence for them, and like one part of me is like, oh, that they're going to be fine. They're going to have like at least win 2-3 races and be all right, and they have Max Verstappen. Like, what can go wrong? And the other part can be like, yeah, they may be really bad, but we'll see what is going to happen. But for now, I think that they would stick with Verstappen and Hadjar.
I agree. I can see them changing them for 27.
Yeah. So that was pretty quick. Mercedes. Also, I think this will be pretty quick. I have George Russell conveniently staying. Although George Russell was close to being dropped for Max Verstappen, they eventually did not drop him and kept him. And I think that Mercedes will be championship contenders this year. And George Russell, I think he's getting better with every year. So he will be really good. And Kimi Antonelli will also, I think, seriously progress. Mercedes have no reason to change them. Also, both Mercedes Academy drivers, so they will stay with them.
Yeah, absolutely support that take. And the only thing that I want to add is, like, I think that Russell, he's the team leader now. He has been in that team for some time now. He has the experience. He would have the car. I'm like 99% sure that he would have the car. So the only thing is that he doesn't have to crumble under pressure, and I think things are going to look really good for him.
I completely agree with what both of them said, and we can straightly move on to McLaren. I think that they will also retain their drivers, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, and as we know that both of them are like championship contender drivers. Let's see if the McLaren can deliver the car though. But yeah, I know that Vasco will have a different take, but let's go to David first.
I mean, Oscar Piastri will. First of all, Lando Norris will stay, obviously. Like, this is the team he's grown up with. Oscar Piastri, he signed an extension at the beginning of the year, which is until the end of 2028. So, first of all, no point for McLaren to do a Daniel Ricciardo and pay him so much money to leave. Also, Oscar Piastri is insanely good. Like, why would... I don't see any point from McLaren's perspective, right? From Oscar's perspective, okay, you have this number one driver debacle, but realistically, there is no point for him to leave McLaren because McLaren are actually the team that offered him a seat in Formula One in the first place, and they saved him from the Alpine trenches, which I think is actually like, I feel like forgotten that Oscar Piastri wouldn't be in F1 if it wasn't for McLaren. They were the one that tried him out, and he ended up being more successful than I think a lot of people expected. So Oscar Piastri, I think McLaren will still be really good, and I think he's well established in this team at this point. Yeah, sure, there's this beef maybe with Lando, but Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton also had beef. But let's say Nico Rosberg never retired, like he was not going to leave that team either way, even though Lewis is there. Like.
But I think the situation is a bit different, and I think that having at that
Oscar's still too young though. He's so young.
Yes, but at that moment of time, I think that McLaren. This is my main point, that if you're not the most dominant team on the grid, but you still want to fight for drivers' championships, you cannot have two really good drivers who are not getting along. And I think that this is going to create tension. And that is why my pick would be Leonardo Fornaroli to be the second driver and to have that first driver, second driver dynamic in the team. And that is why I think that probably Oscar is going to take a gamble and we're going to have a solid shake-up.
I don't think Oscar needs to take a gamble because he drives for McLaren, but this is my opinion. I think he can even beat Lando this season if he is really good, which I think he is really good, so he can definitely beat him. So.
I agree.
We'll see. A year from now, everything can be different, so...
Yeah.
But interesting pick. It makes the things really like more, let's say, spicy.
A lot of pressure would be on Fornaroli there.
Yeah, but I think that's pretty much it. I think we had like a lot of different takes this time. Let's see which one of us is going to be closest to the reality.
I think nobody, but...
Yeah, this is all for today from us. We're looking forward to the next episode. Till then, like, subscribe and follow us on AUBG Data on Instagram and Facebook, and stay tuned for more of our content. Thank you, and remember,
if you no longer go for a gap that exists,
you're no longer a racing driver.